I, oh, no, I don't really want to say this.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me say it then. Let me quickly move on.
Don't go in the basement.
You're listening to the Basement Years podcast with me, Simon Tuck, and yes, live from his sunny home. And he looks like he's in a prison at the moment. Colin, what? It's like that screen on your window.
I'm not in a prison.
It looks like, no, honestly, it looks
well,
like you've got these lines going up, and I know people can't see this, but visually, there's a picture of you, okay, and there's lines going up and down your face and across. It looks like you're in prison.
It's not great radio, though, Simon, is it? Really? But there you go. Yes, visualize me with lines across my face, everybody.
You have
it's
lines
amazing.
across your face. It makes you look younger. I think you should do this every week.
It's my birthday tomorrow.
No way.
How old do you think I am now? How old do you think I am?
I think you must be I don't know, 50, 58.
60. Oh, that's a good try. I'm 59 tomorrow. You know that, Tim, don't you? Because if I let the cat out of the bag.
Oh my gosh, our special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Dobson.
Hi everyone.
Oh my gosh. This is like me going back as a 19-year-old to some like little cupboard, walking through it and seeing you guys there like messing around, and I'm back in the basement. I feel like I don't know, I feel very young again.
Let's introduce Tim properly.
Yes, Lucy. Introduce. So who's our special guest this week?
Oh, I don't know. Who's the special guest, Simon?
Well, he's a guitar playing, church leader, grandfather.
Humming. Do you remember when he used to play guitar?
Oh, yes.
To hum along to his own melodies?
Weren't we going to do whistling as well? Whistling worship. I thought we would. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Dobson.
Hi there. Good to see you. Colin, Simon, lovely to see you after all these years.
Yes.
Yeah, look at this. What's time done to us?
Actually, Tim, you're not much to you. You look pretty much the same. Bit more grey than me.
Yeah.
Actually, not much on top. Yeah, okay. I've got nothing on top. Though.
I've got something on top. There's my hair still. Thank you very much indeed. Wow. Tim Dobson, it's been like forever and a day. And
years
and years, and maybe, I mean, I wouldn't want to pigeonhole you, but most people probably remembered you as that rainbow strap guitar playing geezer from the team, right? Would that be a fair assumption?
I think back in those days, probably Colin and Chris did the custard pies and the fun and the mayhem, and I wore the guitar with the rainbow strap. And whether it was empty tummy rumbling or waving your hands in praise and adoration, even Colin's got a head like a ping pong ball.
Yes,
those were the days. Classic songs that we all remember with delight.
Some moderation. Yes,
they don't sing them like that anymore, do they? They really don't. No,
you need more than 3 chords these days.
Just and a huge PA system and everything.
That's right. Yeah, and the haircut as well. Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. When you look back on those days, it was incredibly fun and challenging as well to reach out to kids who came from all sorts of backgrounds, right? And you were teaching them songs, but you were going in it kind of like in a roundabout way. I mean, obviously, I remember If You Empty Tummy's Rumbling. I really love that song, still love it. And if you leave your hinds beat, but you can't climb a hill. You refuse a Coke, and your best friend's being ill.
Really
everybody used to go
vomit. Yeah.
Don't treat it like a joke, and don't forget to pray if you want to follow God's day. A very simple line at the end, but actually the passion behind what you were doing in worship at that point was quite unique, right? Surely.
I think there was something about corporate singing, and it was. I mean, some of it was fun. So whether it was ping pong or whether it was baked beans. I mean, some of it was, but actually for people that weren't yet Christians, to come into a situation where there's songs that we sang together was, again, because back in those days, probably in school assemblies and whatever, you didn't really kind of sing. And I think, to make something like worship accessible and fun, start off with, and then maybe head into, I don't know, segue into I believe in Jesus.
Yes.
I believe he is the Son of God. Again, another favorite from the time. I think just helped people, particularly if they're non-churched, helped them to engage with what was going on, and hopefully engage with God in the process too.
What would be your earliest memory of Colin, though? Because like you guys, didn't you guys meet at university? Is this right?
Yeah,
you guys are at university. So you go back way back before even like the work you did in the basement. So how was that? What happened? What went on?
Well, I was, when I moved to Bristol, my accommodation form got lost. So I ended up living out in Wraxall for the first term, and cycling in through all kinds of weather. But I eventually managed to get in the January of the second term a place in Hyatt Baker Hall. So I arrived at Hyatt Baker Hall, and Colin was there to greet me, and actually part of the Christian group in the hall of residence there at university. And it was so great being a newcomer who missed all the kind of freshers week, all the induction. Actually, to find somebody that was welcoming, befriending, crazy, all those things. It was great, yeah. And we became great friends. Shared a flat in our third year as well.
Wow.
Shared a flat together. I was Colin's best man. He was my best man. So back in the day, yeah, good times.
Colin, what was your first memory of this cyclist that turned up at the university?
I don't really want to say this.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me say it then. Let me quickly move on. I did feel very sorry for Tim when he arrived because he had no friends. He was all alone. And I sort of, it was sort of pity love, really. But
appreciated.
But he then became such a good friend and someone I love dearly. So, but yeah, my first memory was, oh, you poor thing.
Yeah. Well, in my first term, I'd actually moved from Wraxall to live with a family in Clifton, Christchurch, Clifton. And 2 weeks into living, kind of bed sitting at their place, the father was killed in a sailing accident. So I had to move back out into Wraxall. So my first term was a slight catastrophe. And but actually getting to know Colin and the team and the guys up at Hyatt Baker Hall was it was great. And I just came from this small little village. I was a Christian before when I came to university, but I probably had quite a simple, naive kind of faith. And and Colin had, I think, probably had thought things through a bit more than I had in some ways. And so that kind of friendship, a group called the Navigators, we used to join in with us as well as CU. And actually, it was a really formative time for me those years.
So did you both just literally leave university and join the basement years, or what was there like life in between that, and you came back together, or was this like the I mean, obviously let's not forget Mr. Curtis himself, but he's not here, so he can't answer for that. But did you guys how did that all start then? Where did the passion and the vision come from? That kind of those early heady days.
Well, I mean, for myself, I went from Bristol up north to Lancaster, trained to be a teacher, secondary school teacher. So I got into youth work. Obviously, I did youth work at church and stuff as well. But yeah, teaching physics at secondary modern school, Lancaster, was what I did. And while Colin was over in Norwich, I think at that stage, weren't you?
Yeah, I went to where Tim came from, actually. Tim came from a little village called Upton, a beautiful little village, actually, on the Norfolk Broads, and I love that part of the world. And then I spent 3 years with Norwich Youth of Christ, which you did as well, Simon.
I did.
This is very incestuous, isn't it? I mean, but anyway, I then came back to Bristol for the Muller Foundation, and after a year working with Tim, working with Chris, thought, I can't do this anymore. I need someone else in the mix here. And I thought, Timothy. And
I think with my educational background, coming alongside Colin and Chris's kind of crazy, zealous kind of faith stuff, working alongside some of the kind of special needs teams up at Monks Park School and bringing some of those kind of educational stuff to the team was, again, part of. So as well as the rainbow guitar strap, I bought some of that education stuff as well.
Of course, yeah. No, we'll get onto that, obviously. I mean, but I just feel like it's weird, isn't it, when you look back on association of people, what they are remembered for, and that's what sticks with them. Do you know what I mean? So, sadly, please don't talk about my life. Thank you, guys, and we'll just move on at that point. Are you listening to the basement? No. Dawn said to me the other day, she goes, why aren't we talking about you? And I went, nobody wants to talk about me. Thank you so much indeed. Nobody wants to.
We could talk about the Morris Minor.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Hey,
was,
listen
that, was that the time Simon got
no,
suspended?
no, yeah, that was the time that Simon got suspended.
No,
Oh my
we
gosh.
won't go there.
That was only my first year. Man alive, I don't even have a clue. I'll ask you the question in a moment. This is the
Okay.
Basement Years. We're talking to Tim Dobson and Colin Piper.
Don't go to the basement.
So don't go down into the basement. We did, and we so enjoyed something of that. And you guys, from a team perspective, showed compassion and encouragement and discipline. Do you know what I mean? In our lives as well. And each one of you were very different. Do you know what I mean? And Tim, you, I'm not saying Colin, you weren't the holy one, but actually Tim, I brought that sense of Bible study in a different kind of way, right? And I know that's been very much part of things that you've gone on to do as well, though, Tim, isn't it? I mean, you're blooming and running a church now for what, over 30 years?
Yeah, been so. After the basement years, was working with what used to be called High Grove Church. We then planted a church into Westbury-on-Trim and then into Clifton. So yeah, I've been with that church now. It's called Woodlands Church for 30 years.
Yeah.
Helping to lead that and doing other stuff in the city as well, and still keeping my hand in with some youth stuff along the way.
Yeah, but I think we've been talking about this in the last couple of weeks with Tiff and Dave and other people about church not being just church, right? We know that it's not more than a building, but actually you've gone on to show that with the mix and the noise. I mean, do you remember, I was looking back at some photos of us dressed as wombles, for goodness sake, going out and about doing a blooming whatever we were doing. I don't know what we were doing, but we were dressed as wombles and we were going around Bristol. Was that like early days of like the noise for you, Tim?
I think there was always something that you thought, the good news of Jesus was about lives being changed and about salvation, but actually it was always about people and about community and about connecting as well. And something about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but actually loving your neighbours as yourself, and that was always part of the deal. And whether it was, I mean, even some just we used to help out at Monk's Park School with some of the special needs groups. I remember we took a motorbike in there. And we just with some of these lads that were not going to get any kind of GCSEs, kind of in trouble with all kinds of folk, and we'd just be taking motorbikes to pieces and just chatting and talking. And it wasn't as though they became Christians, or whatever, but actually it was just helping them with their self-esteem, feeling valued, feeling noticed, feeling listened to. And I think there's always this part of what does good news look like, and it does involve theological things and the Bible and Jesus, but actually it does involve compassion and care. And I think, probably all along that's been something that has mattered to me and has been reflected in the way that, leading church since then.
Do you think you guys were you working that out in those days in Bristol? Do you think that kind of social aspect of church, because you were sending us out into schools, you were sending us out to doing Right Side Up events, we were meeting kids on the edge as well as those from all sorts of schools. Was what you do now, both of you, what you do now, was that a passion started back in those days in Bristol?
If I can answer this one, because I think I can probably answer for both Tim and myself. I don't think we would claim that, actually, Simon. I think both Tim and I have walked very similar roads, actually, in terms of not only Bristol. We then went down to London. Both of us worked at something called the Ichthus Christian Fellowship with Roger Forster. And to be honest with you, we owe so much to the folks that have led us and just served us and taught us so much. And I think that was the root of it. In a way, Bristol was an experiment, I think, in terms of expression of that. But no, the root lies in what we were grounded in, both as students and then soon after. Actually, I'm sure you agree, Tim, don't you?
Yeah, no, totally. Those times of seeing, this guy called Roger Forster, again, double first at Cambridge, super intelligent, but actually leading a church in Southeast London that not only was one of the fastest growing churches at the time, but just had they had something called Jesus Action, which was their social action, and they did all kinds of things in Peckham and kind of Brixton, and again, but just slightly outrageous care for the poor, care for the broken, no strings attached kind of compassion ministry that was, again, like Colin said, it was really inspiring, and which is partly why, I mean, in the day we used to call it educational care, is that actually there was something about what we were trying to do that was educational care. I mean, it wasn't just schools ministry. It was, and I think probably that reflected in, again, just some of the young people that we met who had just such some of the roughest starts to life that you can imagine, and to go and do, I don't know if you remember some of the self-esteem lessons that we used to do, and again, just trying to help them to think, value themselves, kind of how, and again, was there a super Christian content? Not really. But was it care and compassion and tenderness towards these young people? Actually, yes, it was. So I think, yeah, I think, yeah, Colin's right. I think from those times at Ichthus Fellowship through educational care and things like you say, like the noise happening in Bristol now, and yeah, some of the things that I see happening still with some of the local communities that I'm serving in South Mead and South Bristol. So yeah.
No, it's absolutely brilliant, and then truly, and both of you have continued with faith as well. Life's not easy though, Tim, and you know, we've all been through all sorts of bits and pieces. But in your position, what are the strengths that you get from some of the knockbacks that you've had?
I think it's interesting, isn't it, when you always kind of hope things are going to go well, and you kind of think, "Oh, God's on my side. He's kind. he's powerful." But actually, it isn't quite as simple as that. And I think probably one of the things that I've learned is that how do you understand the complexity of faith? I mean, one of the things I ran a couple of years ago was a doubters group, and what it was is what people who maybe made a commitment as a child, or maybe even as a young person, and in the way you communicate the good news of Jesus, actually, it's a little bit simplistic. It's a little bit kind of black and white. It's a little bit, I mean, it's hopeful, and but actually, as they go through life and they find the knocks and the prayers that aren't answered, and the disappointments, and the dreams, that they sang the songs, "I'm going to be a history maker," and now they're in the Middle Ages, and things, they haven't made much history. In fact, they made quite a few mistakes. And we ran this little group called the Doubters Group because they didn't want to give up on their faith, but they did have questions, and it wasn't the kind of questions you could ask at an Alpha course, because it wasn't like the starter questions, but it was questions around, I'm really disappointed with God, and I'm really disappointed with life, and I mean, I can't give up on it, but I'm not sure I can go on with it. And it was just a fascinating discussion to have with people, again, with long-term health difficulties, of relationships that hadn't quite worked out, of, I mean, some kind of had real zealous passion, whether it was a Youth for Christ year or a YWAM year, and somehow that kind of all the excitement of the year, and somehow they got into work and they maybe got married and had kids, and actually it was just a fascinating discussion group to be part of, and to find journey with people, to find that there aren't always answers, but there's always presence, the presence of God through that, and there's, yeah, we never get what we want, but we are becoming who we should be, and I think that some of those things are just really important things.
Wow, that's good. A doubters group, Colin, right?
Yeah, I got nothing to add to that. I just want to hear more from Tim. I'm honest with you, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I love that concept, because I love the concept of being free to doubt. We only doubt what's important to us, don't we? I mean, if something's not important, we don't bother doubting it because we don't even think about it. But if you're deeply in love, you ask questions like, how can she love me that much? I mean, you doubt what you value, and so doubt is an important part, actually, of the Christian life. And to be able to sigh a sigh of relief and say, yes, I can have doubts and I can articulate them, and there's a safe place to talk about them. Tim, that's just wonderful. That's fantastic.
It was a great little group, and I was just talking to someone yesterday, and again, done the whole survivor thing, whatever, and again, second year university, just wanting to kind of to question themselves, and question evangelical Christianity, and again, just to spend a couple of hours with him and just saying, actually, it's great to ask you questions. It's great to be honest, and I'm convinced that God's big enough to hold you through those questions, those doubts, and Yeah, I must admit, listening to Dave's few, and just again, his bravery and courage through difficult times. Actually, I must admit, you asked me that question, Simon, and I look back at my life and I think, do you know what? I am actually so fortunate. I mean, there's not been so many desperate crises. I mean, there's been things that have been disappointing and sad, and dreams that haven't been fulfilled. But yeah, compared to some things people go through, yeah, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. If there was one story from the time that we had together, not us necessarily, or even Colin or whatever, but during that time in the basement years that encouraged you the most, what would that one story be?
It's interesting that I've got an in tray here on my desk.
Okay.
And buried at the bottom of it, I've got I've got some old photos and actually old thank you cards. And if ever I'm feeling particularly kind of miserable, I'll rummage to the back at the bottom of my inbox, and actually there's a number of thank you cards and different things, and actually some of them are from the basement years. And again, I just think, well, I do think it was a privilege. I look back at those times and I think we did see God doing some things that probably I haven't seen since. I mean, I've seen God do all kinds of wonderful things, but the number of people who kind of became Christians, some of the people that became Christians actually are now part of my leadership team at church. Caroline Davison, she was Caroline Reed, is one of our worship leaders. Jo Sunderland, I can't remember what her maiden name was, but again, she's one of our congregation leaders, part of the team. I don't know if you remember Alison Percival. Again, yes. She's still around at Woodlands. Catherine Tollerton, Debbie Wright, missionaries, and again, to still find some of those connections of lives that were touched. So in some ways, it was the experience that I thought, actually, there was one, Jonathan, I can't remember his surname, but I remember just one time him coming up to me and said, I do like Colin, and I do like Chris, but I think I identify more with you, Tim, and somehow that there's a variety of ways you can be a Christian, and actually to be on a team with different ways of expressing your faith. And I love working with Colin and Chris, and they're super gifted, and I kind of sometimes feel slightly in awe of their communication abilities but I suppose to feel that actually we could model something, that you can be you and you can bring what you bring, and that's good and that's fine. And I think so. Yeah, that little conversation was one thing that probably stays with me. There's a few other things. Conversation with Matt Lilly. I mean, we called our first son Matt, and again, just one of the things with Matt that we talk about. There's lots of things there.
And if there was a Right Side Up event, wow, that you really kind of went, wow, what on earth were we doing there? Or that was, or a camp or something like that, or whatever that, what would be a memory that you look back and go, what on earth was going on there? I mean, if it doesn't involve, a big green monster, then I don't want to hear about it.
The swamp monster, especially for you. I mean, it'll never be the same, especially for you, Kylie and Jason. Kind of, that was the year in the swamp monster. Sid the mouse. For our eldest was born during the Wild Kingdom camp, but I remember we came down to Sidmouth, and there was this latex mouse called Sid Mouse. And for some reason, Matthew, when he was, I think it must have been 2 at that time, I mean, he just loved this mouse. And I did ask Chris, could I take Sid back home? And I think it might have been Matthew's birthday. And it was just made up that Sid had come to his birthday party. It was just, so there were some crazy, crazy times that we had on those fringes. But
I think the fringes made those are the fringes that made those camps, isn't it? I mean, isn't it funny that we remember the fringes more than the actual other activities, apart from the big dump where we got dumped in the middle of nowhere, and then you drove off and we had to find our way back. Do you know what I mean? So, but apart from that, do you know what I mean?
But there were some times where there would be an evening meeting, and we'd start off with If Your Empson Was Rumbling. Actually, then we'd sing a couple of other songs about Jesus, and then one of us would talk, and and then there'd be just a moment of silence and a chance to respond. And actually, there were times where you felt that God was at work. And even now, I'd meet some people if they pop into Woodlands Church from back in the days, and they'd say, actually, there were times there where it's like my insides were warmed up. It's just like I felt that God was doing something on those evenings. And so again, some of those were special evenings as well.
Yeah, and I must admit, even looking back there again as a team member, nothing was hyped. There were hypey moments, but nothing was hyped in the sense of faith was never hyped by you guys. Do you know what I mean? It was never seen as, come to Jesus, all is well. Do you know what I mean? There was a practical level of what you said about stuff. And was that's a conscious decision between you, Colin and Chris, or I mean, how did you talk about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I had quite a moving moment a couple of years ago when, because we now live right up the top of Scotland on what is the NC 500, it's a very popular tourist route, and so people come through all the time. And a young lady who was on one of our camps or whatever, she said to me, she'd gone on in faith and she'd been in Peru as a missionary, but had a horrible time there. And she said, I just want to thank you, Colin, because you were the only one who told me that the Christian life was going to be tough. Be ready for it. And she said that kept me going. And I found that very humbling, actually, because I'm not sure we did think through that much.
We just winged it. We winged it most of the time.
Well, Chris and I do talk a fair bit. I mean, we were doing something together last week. We're doing a review of global youth ministry, actually, and Chris was speaking for Europe. I mean, it was, and we were just trying to work out where we at. I mean, what's going on? Because we do look back at those Bristol days as sort of something unusual, and would love to go back there in some ways, moving on in others, but there's a sense in which God was doing something special in those days, and there was a reality, and authenticity, I think, is key. We keep coming back to that in these podcasts, so I don't want to keep reiterating the same thing, but you can't hype the Christian faith, because sooner or later you're going to be found out. You just got to say it for what it is and let people make a real decision, and then it will last. And I always think that if God is true, he's big enough to defend himself. I don't need to hype him. And that was basically, if we thought anything through, that's probably as much as we did. I may be being unkind to you and Chris, Tim, but
no, I think we just went with what we felt God was doing, and yeah, and it was to see, the number of schools that were open, the number of people responding, actually the number of people volunteering to be part of teams and things was, and I have seen, again, with something like the mix that I led for kind of 18 years, again, within that kind of framework of seeing lives being touched by God and being impacted, that carried on going, again, very much a privilege to be part of.
Yeah. No, and I think, really, for both of you anyway, we would say that to Colin as well as you, as well as Chris. I mean, we just want to say thank you, because your investment has mean, where we are today. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's what God has done, and we just like to say thank you. And I think we should honor. Do you know what I mean? Not because you're going to die next week, but I don't know. But the reality is, thank you. Do you know what I mean? Genuinely thank you, because I think what you've invested in us, Tim, has had longer lasting effects, and we'd just like to say thank you. So thanks for cycling in from Wraxall, and and for that day, meeting up, and God has bigger plans, right? So there you go. So so congratulations, Tim. Thank you so much indeed for all that you've done, and thank you for being part of this podcast tonight.
Great to catch up.
It's just weird all being together, right? I mean, it's like, thankfully, it's not like a school reunion where you don't know anybody. But this is great. So thanks so much. And Tim, I mean, I know you haven't got your guitar with you, but we would want to sing, right? You know what I mean? Together.
I could hum.
Yeah, well, of course.
In a socially distanced kind of way.
It was you and the whistling thing, wasn't it? You were going to whistle.
I must admit, I do still drive Bev, absolutely spare by my. She'll say to me occasionally, Tim, you're doing it again, and I'll be humming away to something. it's inanely. So I'm
Mhm.
afraid that still is there. Yes.
Did you
we
teach?
absolutely love you for it. Tim.
Yeah, no,
Don't we?
totally. Yeah,
I
don't
could say
change.
that for the northwest of Scotland.
Yeah,
to be
that's
fair.
it.
Well, you can't hear me.
Yeah, yeah, that was a say. Oh yeah, no, totally. So thank you, Tim. Really, really, really great to have you on the podcast, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you so much indeed. And Colin, also thank you to you, obviously, for your time.
Don't go, don't